Talk about a productive recruiting weekend. Miami Hurricanes have gotten almost 100 elite 2025 and 2026 prospects on campus.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happiest of Sundays. I am Alex Donno. I'm a University of Miami alumnus, longtime South Florida sports radio vet, and contributor to allhurricanes.com. And thank you to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen and your first watch. We are free. Wherever you get your podcasts, we're free on YouTube. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers join today, and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Folks, Raw Battle 7-on-7, I should say, taking place this weekend in South Florida. Junior Day at the University of Miami have had a list of somewhere between 70 to 100 elite prospects. Many of those 2025s, bunch of 2026s as well, have been visiting Miami's campus. Mario Cristobal's head is probably spinning, but this is what he loves to do. He loves to recruit, and our guest today loves to talk about recruiting. The man, the myth, the legend, Larry Blustein, South Florida High School Sports, AM 560 Sports, WQAM. Now, Blue, you were out at Battle 7-on-7 on Saturday. I'd love some of your takeaways and some of the prospects that stood out most to you.
Well, first of all, Alex, like you said, what a crazy weekend of action in South Florida, where you have a junior day for Miami, and you can see it's ramped up. The last couple of years you've been building towards this, and looking at Alabama's junior day and Georgia and all those, and seeing all those studs, and go say, you know what, maybe soon we'll be getting a lot of those kids on campus, and here you are 2 years into the regime, and yeah, I mean, as you said, they got some really, really good kids on campus. A lot of kids also kind of made it a double weekend, having an opportunity to come from all over the country, as the battle tournament attracted some 45 to 50 teams, yesterday looking New York and California and Texas and Arizona and a lot of these a lot of these areas that had, big time kids. And we had an opportunity to talk to a few. I mean, certainly there were some really, really good guys. And then a lot of them who played early, they had like different flights, I think, starting at 8:00, and they were over by like 10:15, and then the next flight. So those programs that played early, like South Florida Express. And so anybody on that played there would have an opportunity to go down to the junior day. And, a lot of them that even played later because the fact that and what a great setup it was for Miami to have it on a weekend where you had these guys come in town and they were already here, so it's not like you had to make a special effort to bring them in. And, they had obviously parents came in and with them and rented cars. So, and I saw yesterday they had buses, and they had also vans that took entire teams down to the University of Miami. And, I know for a fact that the Miami Raw team, they played in the middle flight, which I think they got done around noon. They were taking a bus down to Miami, and then obviously having lunch, and then going to the University of Miami Junior Day. So, yeah, it was awesome. And, really good weather, and Chris Circo and Battle always put on a tremendous, show. And, it's usually so tough because your head's spinning. There's games going on everywhere. So here I'm asking, a couple of people, where's this guy, or who's playing here? And then, here's Cam Newton that comes down, probably one of the most recognized face in the world right now. The guy, I've seen him before, Alex, but I didn't know he was so damn big.
Oh, he's huge.
He's a huge guy. And, when you get a chance to see them, Willis McGahee was out there and, just checking out action. So, and our friend Raja Bell, who son Dia played, along with Malachi Tony. They actually played for a California team. And, a lot of people get really, I think they don't understand the format. You don't practice.
Right.
You see, you're on a team and you join them wherever they are in Vegas and, or California. Like this week, it's everyone's going to Vegas, and then they got Houston. But what you do is you show up, and then you meet each other at the hotel the night before, maybe have a little walkthrough and go over a little bit of, some of the formats, offensive people and defense. So that's how it's done. I mean, it used to be done like that in girls softball, for years, but now it's evolved where, here we have kids playing, with, Florida kids playing with California schools and, Georgia programs. So it was a lot of fun and saw a lot of familiar faces. And, as you and I talked, I mean, you look at a guy like Luke Nickel, who's just going to be a senior this coming year, class of 2025 kid, from state champion Milton. They'll be down here the first week of the season to play American Heritage. So that's going to be get a chance to see him again. But I'll tell you what, I was so impressed with him. And I watched him last year, and I've watched him on film. And I'll tell you, he just in a short 7-8 months, this is somebody who's really, I think he's emerged as one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the country. I mean, he's a big time kid, makes all the throws, got good size, especially yesterday against every competition. And I watched him in all 3 of the games that they played. He different level kid. His emotion is the same, which I love. He doesn't get too high, doesn't get too low, and doesn't get upset at himself. And when you have somebody like Cam Newton right there at your side, and he was, every time they, in that setting, if you've never been to a 7-on-7, your coach can stand basically right next to you. So, he was telling him, and I overheard some of the things that Cam was telling him, and, put your shoulder this way, or when you're throwing to this guy or that guy. And I'll tell you what,
how cool is that to be able to get like one-on-one coaching from Cam Newton when you're out there? It's crazy.
Unbelievable.
And Luke Nickel, who Blue is talking about, as probably most of you already know, 2025 quarterback committed to Miami. And obviously Miami, this is another, almost 11 months that you have to keep him locked in before he can sign a national letter of intent. But it seems, Blue, that Luke Nickel he's about as high on Miami as anybody could be at this point. He was wearing the UM shoes. He was wearing a UM chain yesterday. So Miami's doing everything they can to keep him locked in.
No doubt. And, he seems like that type of guy. And I know Georgia and schools like that are going to put, especially now that he, last year, he was just a guy out of Alpharetta, but now he's a little bit more than that. And I know they're going to put the hard press on him, and rightfully so. But I think that he loves the environment, getting a chance to talk to him yesterday, in between. And the games were the greatest thing is there's no wasted time. You go from one game to the next, so you could get in and out, and battle does. And now all the tournaments are like that, but you have very little time to to talk. But during when we were going field to field, because we had them on our 6-ring cane show about a month ago, and I went and we talked about that, and great head on his shoulders. He's excited about coming back to Florida. He wants to redeem what they did. That was their only loss last year to Western at the beginning of the year. And good dude. Really a very intelligent young man, well spoken. You could tell he's a leader. So.
Well, there are so many more prospects I want to talk about with Blue who were are in Miami this weekend, whether it be competing at Battle and visiting Miami or just visiting the U. I want to talk about players like Jaime Ffrench, who had some standout plays, former Alabama commit who reopened his recruitment. Miami's all over this one. His high school teammate, Hilton Stubbs. I want to talk DJ Pickett. You guys know I love the Pickett family. I want to talk about Zayden Walker. I want to talk about Byron Lewis from American Heritage, TJ Alford, the 4-star linebacker. We have so much to get to, my friends. You know what you want to do? You want to keep it locked right here. We are only getting started on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. Guys, I am only getting started with eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. What brings home the winning trophy is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. From superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more, whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to turn your car into the MVP and bring home that win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit available only to U.S. customers. Thank you so much for this special Sunday recruiting episode of Locked On Canes, for making us your first listen today. I should say we're available free, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Odyssey app, wherever you get your pods. We're available free on YouTube. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure you're checking out Locked On Sports today, a channel launched by this network that's literally streaming 24 hours a day, national and local sports conversations, the first ever 24/7 streaming sports channel on YouTube. That is Locked On Sports today. We got the man, Larry Blustein. Our boy Blue is with us talking some battle 7-on-7. So Blue, a really intriguing prospect to me is five-star wide receiver Jaime Ffrench. Was an Alabama commitment for 2025. He backed off of that when Nick Saban retired, and he's completely remixing his process now, and he has listed Miami, Florida State, and Ohio State as his current top three. And I came to find out yesterday, because my colleague Brian Smith had a chat with him yesterday. Miami was actually the first team to offer him. So he seems to be seriously considering the Hurricanes. How good is Jaime Ffrench from Mandarin and Jacksonville?
Yeah, well, if you watch the state championship game this year against Columbus, you kind of know how good he is. There were a couple of guys that you look up in the state championship game. He and Cortez Mills at Homestead, who was there yesterday as well. He's a beast. But you look at like a Derek Class, who's a big time on Miami campus teammate of his. Derek came over his senior year to Mandarin, and you know what a rah-rah guy he is. And I saw them last summer for the first time. I saw Ffrench for the first time last summer at Gainesville during the summer for a 7-on-7. And, and everybody always says to me, goes, well, why do you go to FSU? And why do you go to these other things to their camps? Well, you see guys like that, and you see Ffrench, and you see, some really, really good talent. And the thing is you get to talk to them, because once you're in, like last year, because University of Florida was kind of rainy weather, so they held everything indoor and had an opportunity to talk to, to Ffrench, and good kid. Big time prize. I mean, catches the ball extremely well, can play on both sides of the ball, is also pretty good in the secondary, if they needed him. And he's a big time kid. He's an elite guy. You get him on, get him in the fold, and this kid is a difference maker. And you certainly look at players like that, and you kind of hope that you could put the hard press, and you could put the hard press on because you already got one of his teammates, and you're working hard to get somebody like Stubbs, who another one that I thought, I saw him last summer, but I didn't think he was as tall as he was. And yesterday I stood next to him. I mean, it's not like I'm 6'5", but I mean, he a good sized guy. I was impressed with what Jaime brings to the table. Also Stubbs as well, long arms, guy very fluid. Seems to have a passion to play the game.
I just elsewhere, I want Miami to just lock up a lifetime commitment from the entire Picket family. Of course, Booker Sr. played at Miami in the 90s. Booker Jr., who has been tearing it up in January. We talked about him, you and me, on a recent episode. He's a Miami signee. He's got a younger brother, Cannon Pickett, who competed in the 5-on-5. He's an offensive lineman. He competed in the line of scrimmage, and he's got a cousin, DJ Pickett, out of Zephyr Hills in the Tampa area, who's one of the top defensive backs in the country, Blue. And it looked like DJ was repping Miami pretty hard. He had the Miami gear. He had a ton of family members with him. Of course, the Pickett family. I don't know what's going on with me today. Not enough sleep. The Pickett family loves the University of Miami. How much work do you think Miami has to do to lock down DJ Pickett, and how important of a recruit is that?
Well, first of all, DJ goes into my spring as a number one player in the state. I mean, when Armando Blunt moved to the next class and then graduated early, that moved DJ and Dallas Wilson, who was there yesterday, who's a beast out of Tampa Bay Tech. Moved guys like him and Jaime Ffrench up the ladder, and also you look at Anthony Rogers, the running back, is playing IMG. Those are stellar type of kids. Cortez Mills, who we talked about a little bit. You take a look at guys like that, and I've kind of known the Pickett family for a long time, and they're actually Zephyr Hills. The dad went to Zephyr Hills High School, just in the north of Tampa, in the Nature Coast area up there, Pasco County, and the kid's a beast. I mean, he covers, he hits, he does so much, plays on the offensive side. And last year, when we were up at that Gainesville tournament, Chaminade happened to be there. And Chaminade had that certain wide receiver that everybody kind of knows about by now that went up against Pickett. Actually, Pickett moved over from the corners of the safety spot to cover him. And, he did a really good job against them. But you got to understand, somebody like Jeremiah is he's at a different level. Yeah. It was great. I mean, and he's a guy, if you get on, and I saw him, and he is repping Miami, and why not? I mean, the family loves it. That's not a big Miami hotbed, north of Tampa. That's usually Gainesville. It's usually FSU, but because you have bloodlines and you have people, you have a father and an uncle who played there. And, it's funny because I saw Booker Sr. last year at the Rivals camp in Fort Lauderdale at St. Thomas University. And he had talked about, his son. He had talked about his nephew being, high-level kids that people have to keep an eye on. And he was right.
Larry Blustein is with us here, who covers high school football passionately, and he is nonstop. He's amazing. AM 560 Sports WQAM is where you can hear him. Also on the Five Rings Canes podcast. Blue, an American Heritage player, former Mark Fletcher backup. Miami is looking at Byron Lewis, the running back from Heritage. What can you tell me about him?
Yeah, Byron's as good as you get. I mean, in fact, I think that with he and Desidor, they have probably the best 1-2 punch that you're going to see. Size, strength. Remember, he plays as a freshman. He was the backup to Fletcher, but he really wasn't, because he played probably more than Fletcher did, because they get ahead and they did quite a few, and he gets all those and he really got more significant carries than people really understand as a 9th and 10th grader. He's amazing, and he loves South Florida. He loves it down here. I had him on our radio show a couple of weeks ago, and on our South Florida high school sports show. Just a great kid. I mean, and I mean that, when I talk to these guys, because I've talked to thousands and thousands of high school athletes over the years, and you get kids who, that are above their years, right, mentally. And certainly Byron's one of those guys, does extremely well in the classroom, well over 3.0 grade point average, especially going to school like Heritage. That's pretty good.
Yeah. Another linebacker that's interesting, and I appreciate the work that Derek Nicholson does on the trail. He seems like a hard, tireless worker. TJ Alford, Tarvis Alford, 4-star linebacker out of Vero Beach. I know that there had been a lot of traction for him in the Florida Gators. It seems like Miami might be making up some ground there, Blue.
Well, yeah, he started out at Bishop, Fort Myers Bishop. I'll think of it in a second. John Carroll. Fort Myers, John Carroll, as a freshman, sophomore, made the move last year over to Vero Beach to play for Lenny Jankowski. He started out as a safety when he was younger. So anytime that happens, when you play safety position, you kind of get a little bit of what the pass coverage is about. Great run supporter. He's got great size, tremendous size, big time kid. He made the move, I guess, for more exposure. Although Coach Grudy's done a tremendous job at John Carroll over the years, he's produced a lot of talent. But sometimes you want to move up, and he did. And he's a and he knows when you play at Vero Beach, you're going to get a lot of eyes on you, especially college coaches. But big time kid, no doubt, makes plays, very versatile, athletic, and getting a chance to see him, many times from like 6 feet away gives you an advantage to see, and not only see what type of athlete he is and what type of football player is, but type of kid he is, and that's something that people kind of like take out of the mix when you're recruiting. Yeah, you could sit there on film and watch a guy, or even be in the stands and watch somebody. But if you're 6 feet away from him, or often talking or listening to him and watching what he does away from the football field, what he does on the sideline, what type of teammate he is, and you learn a lot. And kids like that are gonna, they sell themselves.
When we come back, I want to talk about possibilities to be the next running backs coach at Miami. We talked about this a little bit on Friday. There's a couple of other names that I probably should have mentioned that I didn't mention, and I would love to get Larry Blustein's recommendation, right? Because Miami just lost Tim Harris Jr. He goes back to UCF to be offensive coordinator. There is a vacancy on the staff now for running backs coach. What is Mario Cristobal going to do? We're going to talk about that when we come back. You want to keep it locked, man? We're not done yet on this new episode of Locked On Canes. And I'm not done yet with FanDuel. We got conference championship games coming up tonight. We got the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks. Happy Super Bowl to all who celebrate from FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. If you're like me, Super Bowl Sunday, it's all about scoring the best seat on the couch, grabbing your favorite football snacks, and placing some super bets and props as well, guys. FanDuel has so many ways for you to end the season with a W or 2 or 3. And guys, we are going to have the hot tip at some point before Super Bowl Sunday. I will give you my recommendation on the over-under for the national anthem. I'm not joking. I've got a hookup who's been right about 7 years in a row on the over-under for the national anthem. So we are going to have that for you guys. And of course, once we find out what the matchup is going to be, it's going to be props galore. Not only can you bet on who will win Super Bowl 58, but FanDuel also has bets for which players will score a touchdown, how many points will be scored, and so much more. New customers, join today and you'll get $200 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to sign up. That's FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Thank you so much for joining Larry Blustein and I on this new live episode. Smash that like button and subscribe here on Locked On Canes, your team every day. All right, so Blue, on Friday, I talked a little bit about the running backs coach vacancy. I did bring up Jawan Sider at Penn State as someone who I think would be a home run hire. I think that there are some internal options Miami should at least look at and consider. Dennis Smith, the executive director of football, who does have history in the past coaching running backs. Mike Cassano, an analyst on the staff, who's actually a former running backs coach at Miami. A lot of people brought up Cadillac Williams as a possible name. So I'd love you to weigh in on some of these. Plus, names I probably should have mentioned. Telly Lockett, who's got Miami history, including high-level high school coach in South Florida, who's currently at Marshall coaching their running back. So he and Lance Guidry probably know each other extremely well. And Benedict Hippolyte, who's on the staff right now, is Miami. He's got South Florida high school coaching history and running back coaching history as well. So you think about all the names who might be in the mix here for this running back coach job. Any thoughts on that? And do you have a recommendation on who should get the job?
Well, there's a lot of guys. I mean, you mentioned some right there. Some I feel are not ready, especially where Miami's going. And no cut on these guys because some of the names that you mentioned are, potential guys for the future. But if you're going to the next level and you want to play at the elite level, you got to get somebody who's been there, done that, not only as a coach and a teacher, but a recruiter.
Right.
Jawan Sider would be my first pick. Obviously, I've known him since he was 12 years old, watch him high school football at Glade Central, knew the whole family. I watched somebody bring back Don Solinger.
Bring back Don.
I just had I spent some time with Don not too long ago. And just before I go on, one of the listeners had asked when the game is with Luke Nickel. That's the opening game. That's the last week of August. Milton and Heritage, just to let you know. It'll be at Heritage. It's part of that Broward County showcase that's going to bring in Gorman to play St. Thomas and Bosco to play Chaminade. So, yeah, it's going to be good. But the guy, and I told you, you and I talked before, you and I were just before we went on the air, and you were asking me some of the guys that I thought. The one guy that I really like is Larry Porter. He's at North Carolina. Yeah. He's had years of experience. I used to watch him when he played at Memphis back in the day, have followed his career. Good dude, has recruited some really good kids. He's a great teacher, and he's a tremendous recruiter, and that's the name of the business. And taking nothing away from Telly Lockett, and then I know, again, there's another guy who I watched play in high school. I watched him coach in high school. Another guy who's been really loyal. He's been to Florida State. He's been to Oregon State. He's been to Marshall, as you said. So he's got a lot of experience. I think those are three guys with Sider. I think three guys that you really consider because of the fact that they know the program, they know the recruiting, and they can teach. And that's the one thing, and, I mean, there's a lot of guys in the mix, and another guy that I had talked about, and everyone goes, well, he's a receiving coach, but what about Brian McClendon, who was at Georgia and did a tremendous job? And
great recruiter.
Because here's another situation. You get Timmy Harris, who was a running back coach. He not only becomes your offensive coordinator, but he's coaching receivers now. So so there's not any set formula, but you look at recruiting, you look at past records. McClendon's had a great record, especially at Georgia, the way he, and look at all the talent that they've had. But those are some of the names that I look at. But I really take a look into Larry Porter because of the fact that he's been around for 25 years and he's been coaching at an ACC level and a Power 5 level.
I love it. And Blue, when can people hear you next on 560 WQAM? When's the big show this week and who you having on?
Got a full show this week, Thursday night show. It's
Love it.
It'll be 6 to 8. We're excited. We're probably gonna, there's a couple of new head coaches locally. Plantation has a new head coach, and certainly Max Edwards, a longtime Northwestern coach, who I think is one of the best, top 10 coaches that I've ever dealt with. Just came back, and he's the new head coach at Miami Jackson. So we'll have him. We'll get a bunch of kids. We'll get a couple of kids every week now, and then as soon as the cycle's over in February, we'll be having some college coaches on. Obviously, Mario will be on. We talked the other day about him coming on during the spring. And we're excited. And it's a great show. I hope you guys listen in every week. We promote it. And if you ever want to know, just hit me up on Twitter on Larry on Blustein Recruiting, or on Facebook on Larry Blustein, and I can let you know. But when we have the show, and that, Alex, the night that we have the show, we do a complete rundown early in the day of the guests that are on.
And I learn more from that show than any other show on the radio. It's you get to the point, and you cover a lot of ground, and I appreciate that. Larry Blustein, thank you so much for the time. Enjoy the rest of your weekend.
You too, Alex. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for being here. We will talk tomorrow on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.